He used to tell me I was lucky to have him. While I worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat, he was messaging my best friend, calling me the most pathetic thing he'd ever dated. Now he's about to learn what real luck tastes like. Adrian and I had been together nearly 3 years. The first 2 felt ordinary and warm. Old movies on the couch in our small Cambridge apartment, his coffee in the morning, my laptop oped to deadlines in warm window light. But in the 3rd year, the quiet started to split, slow hairline fractures that widened with every harmless joke. He began checking my phone. He asked where I'd been, who I'd been with, why I'd returned 15 minutes late from the grocery store. A male coworker would text me about a spreadsheet and he'd ask, half joking, "What does he want from you?" He made thin, public cracks about my fidelity in front of friends until I laughed to save face. But at home, my chest ached as if someone had tightened a band around it. I had never cheated. Not once. I stopped having coffee with colleagues. I skipped solo lunches. Anything to avoid a scene. The more I tried to prove my loyalty, the more he narrowed his suspicion. Some nights I heard him mutter another woman's name in his sleep. When I woke him, he called me oversensitive. "You're being dramatic, Eva," he said like it was clinical, not cruel. He called me Eva in a voice that no longer carried warmth, only tired dismissal. Then one evening Lila, my high school friend, my sister by choice, came over. I'd been recounting the latest small humiliation, him accusing me of meeting someone because I was 15 minutes late. Lila listened, then her face hardened. She pulled out her phone and placed it in front of me. An active dating profile, Adrian's, stared back, photo fresh, bio. Single, looking for fun. I remember a hollowing in my chest. Lila explained she'd suspected for weeks. A friend had matched with him, recognized him from pictures on my social media, and quietly gathered proof. She'd waited until she was sure. That night, we sat under the apartment's dim light and made a plan, not to get him back, but to make him face what his lies had cost. Lila created a fake profile and messaged him. He matched within hours. The messages were sickeningly predictable. Him describing me as psycho, claiming he was trying to get away but couldn't, because she pays half the rent and cooks. He sent screenshots of chats with other women where he mocked my appearance. "I almost gag when she kisses." Me, and boasted about his saintliness for putting up with me. He promised one of them, "It won't be long. I have plans. I didn't explode that night." I didn't tear anything down. I smiled when he came home and asked whether he wanted his favorite dinner. He hugged me, oblivious. Inside, something cold and precise took shape. I would stop being the punchline. I would stop begging. If silence had teeth, I would file them sharp. Lila's eyes were not just angry that night. They were purposeful. She arrived days later with a laptop, a latte, and a kind of resolve I hadn't seen in years. She built the fake profile, the photo of a confident brunette who looked like me but sharper, a personality that blinked flirt with boundary. Within hours, Adrian matched. Watching him flail into that trap made me sick and absurdly lucid. He messaged, "You look familiar. Do you go to the gym?" And she played coy. He told the fake woman he was trying to escape an oppressive relationship, painting me as jealous and controlling. The messages slid across the screen. Selfies, invitations, whispers of leaving. He didn't hesitate to show how ready he was to replace her. We decided to weaponize his ego. I played the dutiful girlfriend. I cooked his meals, did his laundry, smiled when he came home with perfume I didn't recognize. While I kept the mask, Lila kept baiting him. And then I called my cousin Clara, tall, model lean, someone who had a talent for making men misread every look as invitation. Clara agreed to be our accidental encounter. The plan was simple and mean in its method. Clara would bump into him at his gym, the same gym where he posted progress photos like a time-stamped trail. She got a guest pass, timed herself next to his bench, and sent me a message. Target acquired. It was almost boring how predictably he fell into it. He asked for her number to discuss shakes. Then messages poured in, flattering, presumptuous, full of quick fantasies about finally being free. Within days, he was canceling our plans. coming home with that smug private expression men have when they believe they're invisible to reproach. Claire reported back. He took her to expensive restaurants he had never taken me to, bragged about his savings, hinted he was almost single. She forgot a set of earrings at his place and then handed them to me, evidence wrapped in irony. He spent money he had promised would be our future. He booked a weekend getaway using a card we both funded. He sold the image of himself as a saver while draining the joint account to fund a fantasy. I watched the bank ledger like a pulse chart. Hotel charges, jewelry, flights. Each transaction was another pound in the scaffolding of our plan. As the months moved on, Clara escalated. Subtle needs, casual mentions of vacations she couldn't afford, little hints that pushed him to prove himself with money. He obliged. The gifts accumulated in my apartment. Handbags, a watch, a necklace. Sometimes they were left at his place for safety, and later turned over to me. The audacity of it made my insides flatten into something like calm. We created a revenge fund from everything Clara nudged him into spending. Vouchers, spa days, dinner cards, what he thought were intimate purchases for another woman funded my quiet recovery. I used some of that money on a spa day with Lila while he fretted about unexpected expenses at home. The irony tasted clean. We weren't cruel for the joy of cruelty. We were exacting. Each choice he made, each lie, each dollar spent would be a map back to him. By month 3, Adrian wasn't subtle. He worked late more nights than not, left receipts in coat pockets, and once called me by Clara's name half asleep. I bit my tongue until it bled. Clara forwarded audio recordings where he called me cruel names, Roomba, dead weight, language so clinical it felt like knives. We convened, not with shrieks but with a checklist, receipts, screenshots, call logs. The aim, hurt where he'd already hurt us, his wallet and his reputation. Clara played him like a violin. She mentioned a tropical resort in flippant longing. He booked it. He sold sentimental items, pawning the guitars he'd once guarded jealously, withdrew savings, took a personal loan. He narrated budget cuts to me we might need to tighten up, while funding a fantasy he called a future for someone he'd met at a gym. The cognitive dissonance was obscene, and then, the absurd, humiliating high note, he proposed. At home, in our living room, Adrian dropped to one knee and produced a ring that looked like an afterthought, the financial metaphor made human. He spoke of new beginnings, of losing and finding, as if a ring could cancel the months of calculated betrayal. I felt laughter and fury war inside me. Say yes and buy time. Say no and end the theater. I asked for time. He offered that I stay with my parents to clear my head. Perfect. It would get him time alone with Clara, exactly what we needed. I left that night to Lila's couch, and the three of us, Lila, Clara, me, accelerated the plan. We needed a final sting. Clara continued the charade. Needy calls, staged meltdowns that required emotional and financial consoling. Adrian poured money into the trip, non-refundable tickets and hotel deposits. We discovered, to my rage and grim amusement, transfers from our joint account into his private accounts to fund the vacation. He was literally using what he and I had built to romance my cousin. He asked me, desperately, to consolidate his debt. Could I take out a loan in my name to bail him out? I set a condition. Full transparency. Bank statements, credit reports, every line item. He squirmed and then begged. I played the part of the patient partner, secretly wired with a small microphone Lila had from her journalism days. Clara hid in her car to listen in. At the coffee shop, he spilled his fear about losing everything. I calmly said, if I'm going to help, I need to see everything. He left the conversation shaken. The maze we'd built closed tighter. He called, pleaded, sold more, and we let him. Let him empty the account. Let him take loans he couldn't repay. We funneled some of his squandered money into our revenge fund and into the safety net I'd been building. A new apartment, a private account, small boxes of my life moved out piece by piece. On the morning he left for the trip, we were ready. We printed the worst messages, the receipts, the audio. We called the folder Memory Box, and then we drove to the airport not to board a plane, but to watch his mask fall off. At Terminal 3 we sat, hidden in plain sight, as his text came from Clara. A selfie. Me, Clara, Lila flipping him the bird, with a caption. Surprise. Enjoy your $17,000 vacation for one. Your girlfriend knows everything. He froze, then crumpled like something that had burned through its own oxygen. He mattered to us once. He mattered no longer. Watching him disintegrate in that airport, calls to blocked numbers, frantic pacing, felt less like triumph and more like the passing of a painful season. We watched him for 20 minutes before he walked away, suitcase dragging, the future he bought deflated. The day of the reveal was both smaller and louder than I'd imagined. Smaller because the action was simple. A letter on the kitchen table, an evidence folder, and a few photographs that fit into one manila envelope. Louder because those objects carried names, his words, his charges, his purchases, proof that couldn't be joked away. We left the apartment clean, an ordinary nest made extraordinary only by the truth left on the table. He returned frantic to a locked door. The building camera recorded the meltdown, calls, knocks, a man finally realizing he had been outmaneuvered. He sent voicemails that alternated between pleading and cursing. We ignored them and moved on because the point of this was not petty cruelty, but clarity. We wanted him to feel the consequences of being both liar and thief. We mailed copies of the playlist of evidence, the screenshots, the bank transfers, the recordings, to 3 groups, his parents, his employer, and a folder we labeled If Anything Happens, that we stored in a cloud drop with several friends' email addresses. The letters were brief and factual. We didn't embellish. We let the receipts and the voice memos do the work. We also posted a single, controlled message on social media after we'd all agreed on timing. One photograph of the 3 of us, unbowed, captioned with a single line that explained nothing and invited everything. Truth has a way of finding the people who try to hide it. That message forced his hand. He called his brother. His inbox flooded with explanations he couldn't keep up. His excuses sounded small in person and tinny over texts. Then the fallout. His boss, who'd recognized the client names and odd expense patterns, called him into a meeting. Someone at work forwarded a few of our receipts. His financial life unraveled like a poorly sewn seam. Loans, defaults, stories that didn't line up. Friends dropped by my building looking for answers. I sent them copies of the folder. His parents read the receipts and the voicemails and, for the first time in a long time, looked bewildered at their son's choices. Adrian tried to fight back. He sent a letter to my parents that they, wisely, forwarded unopened. He left drunk messages at 3 a.m, crying into the Ring camera outside my building until security escorted him away. For a while, he cycled through tactics: anger, self-pity, promises to pay back every penny. Months later, we heard he was working 2 jobs trying to keep his head above a debt load he had chosen. And us? I moved into a small apartment Leela helped me find. I opened my own bank account, accepted a promotion at work that felt like a private triumph, and kept the jewelry and items he'd bought for Clara, cash converts to quiet security. We took a spa weekend with the Revenge Fund. We planned a vacation for next summer without anyone else's money attached. Sometimes I think about Mercy. I didn't want to ruin a life. I wanted an accounting. For months he had treated me as disposable, an appliance, a roommate, a bank. When you have the receipts, you have leverage. When you have witnesses, you have truth. We used both. One night, months later, he showed up at my building at 3 a.m, drunk, contrite, and a spectacle on my Ring feed. I watched him cry into the camera and then sent the clip to Clara and Lila. We laughed until we cried, then forwarded the footage to building security. He was escorted away and finally stopped calling. I sleep now without someone else's snores pressing into my ribs. I wake to an apartment that's mine, to a job that values me, and to the knowledge that I didn't beg. I made sure the record was clear. That, for me, is the only justice I needed. A ledger closed, a voice heard. And from time to time, when I see a receipt with his name on it appear in my memory, I smile quietly. Karma, we discovered, doesn't need theatrics. It needs patience and a well-documented trail.